You think you know who you are. You can repeat your name, your history, the list of things you've accomplished. You can point to your degree, your job title, your tastes and preferences. You can recite the stories you've told yourself so many times that they hardened into identity. You believe this bundle of memories, roles, and expectations is the real you. But what if it isn't? What if the self you cling to is nothing more than a performance, repeated so often it became permanent? Jung would not congratulate you for it. He would shake his head quietly and remind you that what you call yourself is a mask, a persona, a construction you've been wearing to remain loved, safe, and accepted. It is not your face. It is not your truth. It is a role. And until you are brave enough to take it off, you will never meet who you really are. Self-discovery, Jung believed, is not gentle. It is not comfortable. It is not a self-help slogan on a poster or a seminar weekend filled with motivation. It is war. War, not with others, but with the image you've been protecting your whole life. War with the illusion you built to survive. Most people never fight this war. Most people would rather be liked than be free. They would rather be consistent than be whole. They cling to the fiction of a clean identity, never realizing that it is strangling them. But you, because you are still listening, something in you is stirring. Something in you is hungry. Not hungry for more information, not hungry for another strategy or affirmation, but hungry for yourself. Hungry for the part of you that you lost, the one you buried under shame, under fear, under the heavy weight of other people's expectations. The one you silenced every time you whispered to yourself, "What if I'm wrong? What if they don't like me? What if I'm too much?" That version of you is still alive, waiting, watching, tired of being hidden. This moment, right now, is not a conversation. It is not entertainment. It is confrontation. You are about to meet the parts of yourself you have been running from. You are about to dig up the bones you buried in childhood, the patterns you learned to keep others comfortable, the quiet rebellion that still beats in your chest every time you pretend. This is individuation. This is becoming whole. Jung did not see the self as something you stumble upon in a moment of inspiration. He saw it as something you become by facing your fragments, by dragging what you repressed into the light. You cannot find yourself in personality quizzes, passion boards, or affirmations. You find yourself only by turning inward, into the dark, into the chaos, into the shadow. The shadow is everything you rejected, denied, or pushed away. It is the anger you swallowed to seem mature. It is the ambition you called selfishness. It is the desire you called sin. It is the sorrow you called weakness. It is the clarity you smothered with politeness. These pieces of yourself didn't disappear when you denied them, they became your shadow. And because you couldn't live openly with all of it, you created a split. You built a persona, a polite and predictable version of yourself that was easy for others to love. That persona helped you survive. It kept you safe. But it came at a cost. Because the longer you wore it, the more you forgot what you were hiding underneath. Eventually, you couldn't tell the difference between the mask and your own face. And this is the trap. The people around you only know the mask. They only know the curated version of who you are, the edited self that keeps you acceptable and non-threatening. They praise this version. They rely on it. They reward it. But you cannot become whole by perfecting the mask. You cannot find yourself by polishing the persona. Wholeness requires shadow. Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The patterns you don't face will keep steering you. The instincts you repress will leak out in distorted ways. The shadow will keep driving from the back seat, and you will mistake it for destiny. So ask yourself, what have you repressed? Not what you dislike, but what you fear others would dislike. What parts of you did society punish? What traits were mocked or shamed until you edited them away? Were you told you were too emotional, too loud, too quiet, too blunt, too ambitious, too withdrawn, too sensitive, too sexual, too honest? Piece by piece, you trimmed yourself down to fit. And every cut didn't just remove a behavior, it removed an instinct. It removed truth. It removed wholeness. You became stable, consistent, agreeable, but never free. And now here you are, maintaining, performing, achieving, but empty. Not because you are broken, but because you are living as half of yourself. Jung saw this everywhere. He saw people who looked calm but were boiling inside. People who called themselves good but carried resentment in their bones. People who gave endlessly but felt invisible. People who succeeded but felt hollow because the success was built on the persona, not the soul. When you build a life from the mask, you lose access to your fire. You lose access to your instincts, your clarity, your truth. This is why most self-help fails. It polishes the persona. It teaches you to improve the mask, to upgrade the image. But what you need is not improvement, it is integration. You must retrieve what you buried. Your rage, your desire, your instinct, your hunger. This is not safe work. It feels like death, and in a way it is. Because the persona must die. Not all at once, but layer by layer. In every moment you choose truth over performance. Each time you say no when you mean no. Each time you refuse to smile just to make someone comfortable. Each time you stop apologizing for being clear. Each time you stop censoring yourself to be liked. That is not cruelty, that is wholeness, but it will cost you. You will lose relationships with people who only loved the mask. You will disappoint those who depended on your obedience. You will break habits that once numbed you. You will feel guilt for choosing yourself. But in return, you will breathe more deeply than you have in years. Because no amount of external acceptance is worth the price of self-abandonment. Jung knew this. He knew the price of truth was loneliness, but the reward was freedom. When you stop living for validation, you become dangerous not because you harm, but because you cannot be controlled. Approval no longer chains you. Attention no longer tempts you. Peace within outweighs war without. That is the shift. You stop asking, how do I look, and start asking, does this align? You stop asking, will they like me, and start asking, is this real? You stop asking, am I good, and start asking, am I true? Truth is not always nice. Truth is sharp. Truth is silent. Truth is messy. But truth is you. The more truth you integrate, the less the world controls you. You no longer fold under pressure. You no longer collapse under judgment. You no longer shrink to fit. You walk with all of you shadow, included, and people feel it. They may not understand it, but they feel it. You become difficult to label, difficult to manipulate, impossible to tame. You become a mirror to the avoidance in others. And that is your power, not to be loved, but to be whole. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be undeniable. And that begins when you stop confusing survival with self, when you stop mistaking your mask for your face, and when you finally decide that freedom is worth more than approval. This is not about optimization. It is not about perfection. It is about wholeness. You are not here to live as a fraction. You are here to become complete. Most people never realize they are trapped in patterns. They confuse their survival mechanisms for their true nature. They call it just how I am, when in truth it is only how they learned to be. But once you see the mask, once you begin to notice the cracks in your own performance, there is no going back. The tension you feel, that unease inside you, is proof you are waking up. You are beginning to sense the difference between who you are and who you've been pretending to be. That tension is uncomfortable, but it is sacred. It means life is asking you to confront the system that has kept you split for so long. Your behavior is not random. The patterns you keep repeating are not quirks of personality. They are the reflexes of a fragmented psyche. They are habits built to protect the mask while the shadow lurks in silence. And Jung warned that until you expose the traps that keep you living this way, you will remain a puppet performing peace, smiling for others, while slowly self-destructing inside. So let us bring those traps into the light. Let us name them. Let us dismantle them, one by one. The first trap is emotional. Obedience. You were taught that being good means being agreeable. You were told that kindness is compliance, that maturity is swallowing your truth in order to keep harmony. You were conditioned to believe that anger is toxic, that saying no is cruel, that wanting space is rude, that reacting strongly makes you immature. And so you trained yourself to be soft, patient, tolerant even when your boundaries were crossed. You learned to nod instead of resist, to soothe instead of speak, to shrink instead of confront. You convinced yourself that this was maturity. You called it being the bigger person. But Jung would ask, at what cost? Emotional obedience is not maturity. It is submission. It is fear disguised as virtue. It is the shadow wearing the mask of kindness. And if you never learn to separate true compassion from compliance, you will live a life of permanent apology. You will apologize for existing, for wanting, for needing, for speaking, for being. You will confuse silence for wisdom, tolerance for strength, self-erasure for love. And all the while, the resentment will grow like rust inside you. Jung called this over-identification with the persona. It happens when you fear your darker instincts so much, your sharpness, your honesty, your anger, that you exile them. You banish them to the basement. But exiled parts do not die. They leak. They show up in passive aggression, in hidden bitterness, in exhaustion, in identity crisis. The parts you silence will find their way out, but in distorted forms. That is why you must stop dressing up submission as kindness. You must stop calling your silence noble. You must let people be disappointed in you. You must let them feel uncomfortable, even threatened. Not because you are cruel, but because you are finally clear. Individuation demands this. It demands you choose truth over comfort. It demands you speak without disguising your boundaries as softness. It demands you stop softening your truth to protect someone else's ego. And yes, people will resist. They have built entire versions of you that exist only to serve them. They are addicted to your obedience. When you stop performing that role, they will not know how to love the real you. But that is the price of liberation. You must decide, will you live as their fantasy, or will you risk being fully known? The longer you live in emotional obedience, the more bitter you become. Become bitter at the people who use you, not realizing you trained them to. You become bitter at the roles you've outgrown, yet still perform. You become bitter at yourself for disappearing behind the mask, so stop. Stop explaining your no. Stop apologizing for your clarity. Stop translating your truth into a softer language. Stop excusing your existence. That is trap 1, emotional. Obedience, the second trap, is subtler and far more deceptive. It is the attraction to the familiar wound. You may think you are free in love, that you choose your relationships with intention, but Jung warned otherwise. Until you integrate your shadow, it doesn't only distort your behavior, it distorts your connections. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you haven't healed. That is why you keep ending up with people who mirror your wounds. That is why you chase the unavailable, the critical, the inconsistent. They feel magnetic not because they are your soulmate, but because your psyche is trying to resolve an old story. What you call chemistry is often unfinished business. What you call "I'm just drawn to them" is often your inner child trying to fix what could not be fixed in the past. You seek out the parent you couldn't please, the authority figure who didn't see you, the early wound that shaped you, because some deep part of you believes that if you can rewrite it this time, you will finally be free. But you cannot heal in the same environment that wounded you. You only repeat it, and each repetition deepens the shadow. You walk away not healed, but more fractured, more convinced you are unworthy, more confused about who you are when no one is watching. This is why individuation often requires withdrawal. Not forever, but long enough to break the cycle. Long enough to stop mistaking pain for passion. Long enough to stop chasing intensity as proof of love. You must stand alone long enough to realize that your wholeness does not live in someone else's arms. It lives in your willingness to stay with yourself. That is when attraction begins to rewire. You stop chasing the firestorm and start choosing safety. You stop begging for attention and start respecting your own standards. You stop asking, "Will they stay?" and start asking, "Do I stay with myself when they enter the room?" That shift marks the end of the second trap. The third trap is the addiction to certainty. The ego hates chaos. It craves predictability, consistency, order. So when you begin to shed your mask, when you start to change, the ego panics. It fills you with fear and doubt. It tells you stories of failure. It whispers that you are not ready. It tries to convince you that the unknown is dangerous, that freedom is death, that you must cling to what you know even if what you know is suffocating you. The ego would rather keep you miserable in the familiar than let you step into an unfamiliar liberation. And so you sabotage yourself. You procrastinate. You delay your truth. You wait for the perfect moment, the perfect clarity, the perfect permission. But that moment never comes. You will never feel ready. Readiness is a myth. What you need is not more time, but more decisions. You must leap without certainty. You must speak without over-preparing. You must act without over-explaining. Individuation is not polite. It does not wait for your comfort. It demands that you leap into the awkward, the vulnerable, the what will they think. That leap is the birthplace of identity. Not when it is safe, but when it is real. The fourth trap hides in plain sight, disguised as wisdom. It is the addiction to self-improvement. You read the books, you journal, you reflect, you analyze. You chase the next level, the next version of yourself. It feels deep, it feels important, but if you are honest, nothing really changes. Why? Because self-improvement has become your new mask. You are still performing. You are still trying to earn worth, but now in a more spiritual costume. You are trying to outthink the shadow instead of facing it. Jung would say, stop studying yourself and start confronting yourself. Less reading, more revealing. Less analysis, more action. The true self does not emerge through endless planning. It emerges through pressure, through a real no spoken aloud, through a real boundary enforced, through a real silence kept instead of pretending. That is when the mask cracks. That is when the shadow begins to soften. That is when you meet yourself. And then comes the final trap, the most seductive of all, the myth of the good person. You were taught to be good, to be nice, to be agreeable. You built your whole identity around being liked. But Jung warned that being good is not the goal. Being whole is. The obsession with goodness is just fear of rejection wearing a smile. You don't want to hurt anyone. You don't want to disappoint. That is noble, but sometimes the truth hurts. Sometimes your clarity wounds. Sometimes your boundary shatters someone's illusion. If your identity cannot survive that, then it was never real. At some point, you must choose, good or whole, nice or true, obedient or yourself. And when you choose wholeness, everything shifts. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop waiting for permission. You stop bending to be accepted. And in that raw, uncomfortable space, the real you begins to emerge. At first it whispers, then it speaks louder. It makes new choices. It feels less guilt. Until one day you realize you are no longer pretending. You are no longer performing. You are no longer seeking. You are simply being. If you have come this far, you have already done what most never will. You have stared at your mask. You have glimpsed your shadow. You have begun the work of individuation. This is how it begins, not with a perfect plan, but with the courage to confront the illusions that held you. Wholeness is not a gift. It is not handed to you. It is something you pay for, and the cost is high. When you begin to integrate your shadow, when you begin to live outside of the mask, you will lose things. You will lose relationships with people who only knew how to love your performance. You will lose approval from those who depended on your obedience. You will lose the easy comfort of blending in, of being unthreatening, of pleasing everyone around you. At first, this feels like death. It feels like betrayal. It feels like something inside you is breaking. And in a way, it is. The false self is being dismantled piece by piece, and as it dies, grief will come. But grief is not failure. Grief is proof that the mask is cracking. Grief is the birth cry of something real. You will feel guilt for choosing yourself, guilt for saying no, guilt for no longer bending as easily as you used to. That guilt is the echo of old conditioning. It is the ghost of the persona tugging at your sleeve. Do not confuse it for truth. The guilt fades. The freedom remains. Jung understood this price. He knew that when you begin to live for truth instead of approval, you invite loneliness. The crowd no longer embraces you in the same way. They preferred the version of you that smiled, nodded, and obeyed. They may call you difficult. They may call you selfish. They may call you changed. And they will be right. You have changed. You are no longer available to play the part they assign to you. But while you may lose their applause, you gain something deeper. You gain the ability to breathe fully, to live without apology, to move through the world unshackled. You gain freedom. Freedom is not a soft word. Freedom is not comfort. Freedom is clarity, and clarity is dangerous. People who live in masks do not like to be around those who have burned theirs. Because when you no longer seek validation, you can no longer be controlled. You stop bending for approval, and suddenly others cannot pull your strings. You stop chasing attention, and suddenly they cannot tempt you with crumbs of recognition. You stop apologizing for existing, and suddenly their power over you collapses. That is why your clarity feels threatening. You no longer depend on them for your identity. This is the true shift. You stop asking, how do I look, and start asking, does this align? You stop asking, will they like me, and start asking, is this real? You stop asking, am I good, and start asking, am I true? Truth is not always pretty. Truth is not always soft. Truth is often sharp, silent, messy, but truth is yours. And the more of it you integrate, the less control the world has over you. Think of the times you folded under pressure, the times you silenced yourself to avoid judgment, the times you made yourself small, sweet, and simple so others would not feel threatened. That was the mask. But when you walk with all of you, age included, ambition included, hunger included, something changes in your presence. People feel it. They may not understand it, but they sense it. You are harder to label, harder to predict, harder to manipulate. You become a mirror that reflects the avoidance in others. They may project, they may resist, they may even resent, but you do not bend. That is your power. Not the power to be loved, but the power to be whole. This is not about optimization. This is not about becoming the best version of yourself. That language still belongs to the mask. It still implies you must polish, improve, and perfect. Wholeness is different. Wholeness is raw. Wholeness is not about making yourself more acceptable. It is about making yourself undeniable. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be real. But realness has a cost. It will strip you. It will take away comforts you once clung to. It will leave you exposed, standing without the armor of performance. It will feel lonely, because most of the world has chosen the mask. Yet loneliness is not the end. Loneliness is the space where the true self first breathes. It is the silence where you hear your own voice again. It is the room where authenticity begins to grow, and once it grows, it does not shrink back. You stop negotiating with yourself. You stop asking for permission. You stop bending for approval. At first, the voice of truth is quiet. It flickers like a fragile flame. But the more you honor it, the more it strengthens. It becomes steady. It becomes undeniable. It begins making choices you never had the courage to make before. It speaks with a clarity that no longer shakes under doubt. It carries less guilt with each word. And then one day, you wake up and realize you are no longer pretending. You are no longer performing. You are no longer seeking. You are simply being. Being does not mean being perfect. Being means you allow all of yourself, the sharp edges, the hidden desires, the raw instincts, the quiet griefs to exist without censorship. Being means you walk into the world whole, not edited. Being means your presence alone unsettles those who are still hiding. And in that unsettling, you offer them an invitation, whether they accept it or not, to face themselves. The price of wholeness is heavy, but the reward cannot be measured. When you integrate your shadow, you gain access to everything you buried. You regain your instincts, your fire, your creativity, your depth. You regain the parts of yourself that make you alive. You stop performing life and start living it. You stop rehearsing what you will say and start speaking what you truly mean. You stop carrying the heavy mask, and suddenly the air feels different, lighter, sharper, freer. This is why Jung's path is not self-improvement, but self-confrontation. Improvement polishes the mask. Confrontation burns it. Improvement seeks approval. Confrontation seeks truth. Improvement is endless striving. Confrontation is surrender. You cannot optimize yourself into authenticity. You must break. You must bleed. You must risk. You must die to the false to be reborn as the whole. And the dying is real. The persona does not vanish with one decision. It clings. It whispers. It tries to return in new costumes. Sometimes it dresses up as politeness. Sometimes as wisdom. Sometimes as humility. You must watch it carefully. You must catch yourself each time you smile only to soothe, each time you say yes when you mean no, each time you censor your voice to remain likable. Every time you catch it, you peel another layer. Every time you peel another layer, the mask weakens, and each weakening is a victory, however small. Integration is not a clean process. It is messy, raw, unpredictable. One day you will feel free, the next you will feel lost. One day you will breathe like never before, the next you will grieve the relationships that cannot survive your wholeness. That is natural. Growth is not a straight line. It is chaos, but chaos with purpose. Jung did not promise comfort. He promised truth. And truth is worth it, because once you live whole, the world can no longer own you. Judgment loses its grip. Approval loses its shine. Pressure loses its chains. You become rooted in yourself. You carry your shadow openly, and people may not understand, but they cannot ignore you. You are no longer a performance. You are presence, and presence is more powerful than any mask. So let the mask burn. Let the shadow breathe. Let yourself step into the fire of becoming. You will not be destroyed. You will be revealed. The work of wholeness does not end with a single revelation. It is not a lightning strike that burns away the false self in one sudden blaze. It is a practice, a rhythm, a constant choosing. Each day you step into the world, you are confronted with the temptation to slip back into the mask. The mask feels safe, familiar, convenient. It promises quick approval, easy peace, temporary comfort. And sometimes you will put it back on. That does not mean you have failed. It means you are still human. What matters is not perfection, but awareness. The more you notice when the mask reappears, the more quickly you can set it down again. Awareness becomes your compass. Living whole requires attention. It requires you to feel the subtle shifts in your body when you betray yourself. You will notice the tightness in your chest when you say yes while your soul screams no. You will notice the shallow breath when you laugh at a joke that insults your truth. You will notice the weight in your stomach when you shrink yourself to keep someone else comfortable. These sensations are not accidents. They are signals. They are the body's way of reminding you that you are slipping into performance. You listen. The body will always guide you back. The practice of wholeness also means learning to tolerate the silence of disapproval. When you stop bending for validation, you will feel the cold wind of being misunderstood. People may step back from you. They may label you distant, harsh, or difficult. This silence can sting. It can feel like abandonment. But in that space, something stronger is born. You learn that you can stand without applause. You learn that your worth is not measured by how many hands clap for you, but by how deeply you live aligned with your truth. The silence becomes a teacher. It strips you of dependency and teaches you the solidity of your own ground. Wholeness is not about never compromising. Life requires compromise. Relationships require adaptation. Wholeness is about knowing when you are compromising values versus when you are compromising preferences. It is about discerning the difference between flexibility and betrayal. There is strength in bending, but only if you bend without breaking yourself. To compromise preference is human. To compromise truth is self-erasure. The mask compromises truth. The whole self never does. Another daily practice is shadow dialogue. Jung taught that the shadow does not vanish when you integrate it. It remains, whispering, pushing, longing. The difference is that now you can hear it without shame. Instead of suppressing it, you can sit with it. You can listen to the hunger without letting it rule you. You can acknowledge the anger without unleashing it blindly. You can honor the grief without drowning in it. Integration is a relationship. It is not silence, it is conversation. And as with any relationship, the more you practice honesty, the more trust grows between you and your shadow. The integrated person does not deny conflict. They carry it consciously. They know they are capable of destruction, yet they choose creation. They know they are capable of cruelty, yet they choose compassion. They know they are capable of greed, yet they choose restraint. This choice is what makes their goodness real. Without shadow, goodness is only obedience. With shadow, goodness is power harnessed. It is conscious strength. It is light with weight. Wholeness also calls you into embodiment. You cannot live fully in your mind. The mind will trick you, rationalize for you, with new masks for you. But the body does not lie. The body remembers. The body reveals. To live whole, you must return again and again to the body's wisdom. This may mean sitting in silence until you feel the tension release. It may mean speaking a truth that trembles in your throat. It may mean moving your body in ways that reconnect you to its instinct, its strength, its groundedness. The more you inhabit your body, the harder it becomes to betray yourself. The mask lives in the mind. Wholeness lives in the body. This is why authenticity is not just an inner posture, but an outer presence. People can sense it. They may not be able to explain it, but they feel it. The integrated person carries a gravity, not because they are flawless, but because they are real. They are not performing lightness, not hiding sharpness, not pretending wholeness. They are whole, and the air around them shifts because of it. Some will be drawn to it, others will be unsettled by it, but none can ignore it. As you live whole, you also learn patience. Integration is not instant, it is seasonal. Some seasons you will feel deeply aligned, others you will stumble back into old patterns. That is part of the rhythm. Do not shame yourself for the stumbling. Shame is the language of the mask. Awareness, compassion, and patience are the language of wholeness. You learn to hold yourself tenderly even in relapse, to remind yourself that progress is not erased by a single step backward. Each time you return to yourself, you grow stronger. Each time you face the shadow, you grow braver. Each time you speak your truth, you grow freer. You grow freer. And slowly, the weight of the mask becomes unbearable. You may still wear it occasionally, but it no longer fits. It scratches, it suffocates. You cannot breathe in it for long. That is the sign of transformation. The persona is no longer your home. The self, as Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, beyond collective expectations, beyond borrowed identities. Individuation is not isolation. It is integration. It is stepping into the world, not as a mask, among masks, but as a whole being among fragmented ones. This is your gift to the world, not your perfection, not your performance, but your presence. You do not heal the world by hiding. You heal it by embodying wholeness so fully that others are reminded of what is possible. In the end, this is not about philosophy. It is about life. It is about how you speak, how you choose, how you love, how you stand. Wholeness is not abstract. It is as simple as saying no when you mean no. It is as profound as refusing to betray yourself for belonging. It is as everyday as breathing deeply when you feel yourself shrink. And it is as eternal as carrying your shadow openly until the day you die. You will not finish this work. There is no finish line. Wholeness is not a destination, but a lifelong practice. And yet, each moment of alignment is victory. Each breath of truth is liberation. Each step without the mask is freedom. And when you live in this rhythm, you will notice something. Life feels more alive. Colors feel sharper. Time feels fuller. Relationships feel deeper. Even pain feels more real, less hollow. This is the gift of wholeness. Not ease, not perfection, but life in its raw entirety. So let the world keep its masks. Let the applause fade. Let the roles dissolve. You have no need for them now. You have found something heavier, sharper, truer. You have found yourself. And once you find yourself, truly, you cannot go back. The false self is heavy. The true self is vast. Step into it, live in it, guard it, and when you stumble, return to it again and again. This is the work of a lifetime, the quiet revolution, the fire of becoming. The world may never applaud you for it, but your soul will, and that is enough.